Okay, cool. Oh, looks like we got Xander as well. So I guess you guys can both give yourselves introductions, which is your school, your accepted colleges, your decision, why you chose your decision college, as well as your potential major.
All right, I can start. So I graduated from Brookfield Academy this year, and I will be attending the University of Pennsylvania in the fall. My accepted colleges were UW-Madison, UNC Chapel Hill, Northeastern University, Duke University, and UCLA and UC Berkeley. I chose UPenn because first of all, the connections you get to make there. I think the name of the college, first of all, probably opens more doors than the rest of my options. Plus, I really wanted to go to college in a city that was sort of a larger city, one that was more, I don't know, active than what I've been around for most of my childhood. So I thought Philadelphia fit that criteria pretty well. Is there anything else? What I did in high school? So during high school, I guess I was involved in music for most of my time in high school. That was probably one of my biggest extracurriculars, the piano and cello. Geoffrey knows about that. I was also on the school's varsity tennis team for 4 years, and I was part of YLA, obviously. I also volunteered a lot with MISO, and they had this program called the MISO Progressions Program, which is basically where you help out like beginner cellists or beginner violinists, and you help a teacher teach them and kind of guide them with your experience and learn how to practice and improve and stuff like that.
Is it my turn now? Yeah? Okay. I'm Xander. I graduated from Brookfield East High School. In fact, I was just at my drive-through graduation, so that's why I was a bit late. I'll be attending Columbia University in the fall, and I was accepted into UW-Madison, Georgia Tech, UC Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, Northwestern, and of course Columbia. I ended up choosing Columbia because it honestly like beat out all the other schools in like every single facet. I can go into more depth, but it's basically like it's more cost efficient. It has a curriculum that's more interesting to me, especially since it emphasizes humanities, even though I am attending the School of Engineering and Applied Science. It's got an amazing location. It has so many like good available connections and basically a lot of other stuff too. If we're going over school activities, the activities I spent the most time on were largely debate and robotics. I don't know if many people know about FIRST robotics. I know Geoffrey does, but I spent a lot of time in FIRST robotics on their software team, so just like coding robots. And besides just being on my team, like help mentor some other teams and just like taught kids how to code and stuff like that. And for debate, I did Lincoln Douglas and public forum debate, and yeah, I competed in that for all 4 years of high school.
All right, so that pretty much covers what actually we asked previously. So we're on track again. So the next question is, so I guess the first question is what AP classes did you take? But the more important question is, were the AP classes worth it to you? And also, what did you learn from the AP classes besides the content?
I guess I can take that one. I think taking AP classes in high school is for sure worth it. You get to, at least at my school, the teacher gave us a lot more freedom to basically plan your own course. I know in all the regular and honors classes in my school, most of the homework was like mandatory. The teacher would be checking your notes every day to make sure you're following along and stuff. But once you get to the AP level, the teachers mostly gave you more responsibility on how you want to do your work and when you wanted to do it. I know most of my AP teachers didn't really check homework. They kind of just assigned it and they're like, do it if you need to, or manage your own study schedule. And I think that was really helpful for me as, a high school student, to learn that kind of responsibility. And I think that was something that would really help me in college as well.
Yeah, so during my high school experience, I ended up taking 9 AP classes and 11 AP tests. But I feel like for me, I know I want to go into STEM, so I kind of wish I hadn't taken AP US History and I swapped it out for like AP Psychology, which is something I kind of wanted to take if I want to go into pediatrics. Looking forwards, but I feel like they do help you with studying. If you take AP Capstone, all of it is like self-directed. You come up with what you're learning about and what you're researching too, so it's 100% self-directed. So all of the time management aspects, all of your deadlines, you have to come up with yourself, which I feel like is a really important skill. Again, like what Andy said, going forward in college. Beyond that, I feel like AP classes are really useful in that if you do get into a college that takes them, the credit's very useful. I know for me personally, with all the tests I've taken, I could skip out almost entirely from my freshman year of courses, which is really nice. So yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, sort of going off of what like everyone else has been saying, AP tests or AP classes really just prepare you in terms of the college workload. The whole point of the AP class is that you're mimicking what you learn in a college at the high school level. So in that sense, it really pushes you to do more and just like learn more and take agency of what you're learning. Oftentimes you will find that because AP classes are so content heavy, a lot of the learning is self-directed. So you have to rely upon yourself and sort of figure out any obstacles you may face. But I mean, I took a fair amount of AP classes in my time at high school, but I don't think that, like, for me, I think AP classes really helped in narrowing as to what I liked in terms of like my interests. You know, I really did not like physics or something, but I really enjoyed bio. I thought calculus was interesting, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for going forward, people should just take the AP classes that you might find interesting, not necessarily the ones that like everyone else around you is taking, because that really strips away the meaning of these AP classes. You need to be able to take these classes and justify why you're taking these classes, because when you're at like 2 a.m. in the morning slogging away at a physics lab, it's not going to be fun. So yeah, choose what you want to do, really.
Throughout my high school experience, I took 11 APs, I think. I think they were like all worth it. I don't really regret taking any of them. I think like even if like the content wasn't the most enjoyable, it helps like prepare you for college classes, obviously, and it teaches you like better studying habits, just because like non-AP classes don't quite push you as much. And so it's like nice, like Lisa said, it also helps you like figure out what you enjoy doing and what content you enjoy. And so it kind of like helps you find your interests and determining your major in college. So I really think that like AP classes are important, and just like experimenting too and finding out what you like and things like that. So yeah.
I pretty much agree with what everyone else has said with like APs in general. I think I took 14 throughout high school, and they were all just like all different subjects. But overall, like I enjoyed almost all of them. I probably only regretted like taking AP Chem just because the teacher really hated me. But besides that, no, yeah, like I think it helps with just figuring out what you want to do. Because I remember like the most influential class I've taken in high school was AP Physics 1. And I came into that class with no knowledge of physics, and then I just love the teacher, I love the course, I love the curriculum. And I think it also just helped me figure out what I want to do in the future, because I did not come into high school thinking I wanted to do CS, but here we are. So yeah.
I feel like everyone else's answers basically covered everything. I'd basically just say to think about APs as a means of like figuring out what you actually like, rather than a means of like boosting your GPA for a lot of schools. Because what happened with me was in freshman year, I took AP Comp Sci because like my friends were all into Comp Sci, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to keep going into Comp Sci. And that helped me determine that I actually did want to continue studying computer science. So then, rather than in the next following years taking like random APs for the sake of like boosting GPA or something, I was taking like college courses for CS because I actually wanted to learn that stuff rather than just boost this GPA. Because like after a certain point, like the weighted GPA does not matter that much.
Yeah, you know, as the last person to respond to this question, it seems like my peers have covered it pretty thoroughly, so not too much to add. I will say, I'll just reiterate whatever people said. So one is just don't take the class just for the GPA boost. You know, if you think you can really do it, that might be fine. But in general, you know, try to take classes that you're actually interested in. Not only just because it'll have like allow you to have a better time in high school, but also if you're applying to colleges and you can show them like a demonstrated interest in a specific subject or region, it's better than just shotgunning every class possible. Yeah, that's basically all I have. Oh yeah, I took 13 AP classes. Yeah.
All right. So the next question is, what standardized tests did you take? So SAT subjects, ACT, SAT, and also what prep did you do for them?
All right. So I took both the SAT and ACT once each, and subject test wise, I took Math 2, Physics, and Chem. I would say for preparation wise, the best thing you can do is just do the old tests. I know College Board doesn't release them, but there's a bunch of resources you can find online for free, whether it's on Reddit or just Googling like past unreleased College Board SAT tests or something. And I think once you do a couple old tests and time yourself, you'll be able to pick up pretty quickly what you're lacking or what you need to improve on. And once you do them, you'll be able to spot the pattern of their questions really quickly. I think that's what really helped me to prepare.
So I only took the state mandated ACT, and then I took for subject tests, Math 2 and biology, molecular biology. And then for studying, I feel like for ACT and SAT, there are a lot of tricks and stuff that if you study up on, like it's very helpful to get you through the test faster. Like for the reading section, you just like read the first sentence and then you get going in the questions. And then if they ask you if you want to insert a certain phrase, the answer is almost always no. But those are all things that you can study up on, because the ACT and SAT are kind of just like time trick endurance tests, which is why, like Andy said, looking up practice tests and really getting through them, because it's not an issue of do you know these things, it's an issue of can you get through it in time. For subject tests, I would say I got practice books. If you can get them or afford them, if not, find someone who can get them. They're pretty useful, I feel like, to touch up on the stuff that your school doesn't necessarily cover as well. At least that's just what helped me personally, but yeah.
I took ACT, and then I also took 3 subject tests, SAT subject tests. And again, like everyone's been saying, you know, you just got to do the practice problems. You just got to review like little tips and tricks that you can find online and stuff. But I think this is a bit of a pivot, but I think a big trend and what I've been noticing, especially for upcoming seniors, is that because of COVID, like everything is turning test optional. But as a whole, I feel like the whole college application process is shifting away from just standardized test scores. So my big emphasis would be not to stress too much about them, try your best, like aim for the benchmark you think you can achieve, maybe even a little higher. But at the end of the day, like that's not going to be the defining factor of your application.
So I took both the SAT and the ACT, and then I also took 3 SAT subject tests. I took literature, AP, or literature, US history, and then math 2 for my subject tests. I didn't really do any prep for any of them, but for the SAT subject tests, what I recommend is like, if you happen to take like AP US history or like AP physics, then just schedule your SAT subject test for like June of that year. So like all the material is like fresh from your mind from the AP test, because they're pretty close in material. And so that way you don't really have to do any prep. You just have the leftover material left from the AP test. And then like everyone else said, I think like with the SAT and ACT, it's less about like your skills and like what you know, and more just like how fast you can get through it, because it's more just a problem of if you can finish. So just like, I think I would just recommend like keep going through practice tests until like you can really like quickly finish. Yeah.
So I took the ACT and I took 2 subject tests. I think I took math 2 and physics. And yeah, like everyone's been saying, I just like downloaded practice tests from the internet, printed them off, and just straight up did them. And I think for the subject tests, I bought like practice books that go over like the material of what the test is going to be on, and just finished those, and then did practice tests too. So that's pretty much all I really did.
Okay, I took the ACT, SAT, and 3 SAT subject tests, which were math 2, physics, and chemistry. To prep, just like everyone else, I just took practice tests. The main sites I actually went to get my practice tests were cracksat.net and crackact.com. They have a lot of practice tests, and they also have them sorted by like topic and section, so you can focus in on like your weak points and stuff like that. Lisa covered this earlier, but like definitely don't put too much emphasis on preparing for standardized tests. Like it's definitely, if there is like a substantial room for improvement, then like go for it, study for it, maybe take it like 2 or 3 times max. But if you're trying to like, if you're wasting like hours trying to get like a 30-40 point increase on the SAT or something, there's definitely more enjoyable and worthwhile things to do.
Yeah, so I only took the SAT, although I had like a mandated ACT. At that point, I was able to opt out, and then I took 3 SAT subject tests. So a lot of whatever people said, I agree with. Like what Xander said, definitely diminishing marginal utility when it comes to like trying to get the SAT test score up higher at the margins. Other things, one is that I actually took mine a little earlier than usual, so the summer before my junior year, and I managed to do well enough to not have to take it again. And I think that's kind of useful, just because if you're able to do that, it puts a lot of stress off of you, especially during your senior year if you're working on upper college applications. That's something you don't have to worry about. And then just when you're studying, also like be sure you recognize like which portion of your test taking game is like the weakest. So for me, it was never like finishing with enough time. I always felt like the time was more than enough, and I would finish with almost extra sometimes. But like so for me, it was really just about accuracy. So like everyone else, I just printed off a bunch of tests, did a whole bunch of them like the weeks before, and I just try to get the highest score possible. Pretty self-explanatory.
All right. So, what summer opportunities do you pursue? And also, did you have any jobs throughout the school year or during the summer? Or like internships? So,
Um, for me, since music was a big part of my application, I went to a 4-week boarding music kind of summer camp thing for the first 2 summers of high school. I thought that was pretty fun, and it really helped me improve a lot, and kind of added onto my application. I think the biggest thing I ever did over the summer was my junior year summer. I went to this research internship kind of thing, like summer camp program they had over at BU. They called it RISE, RISE, something like research in science and engineering or something like that. I thought it was a 6-week camp in Boston. I got to work with a professor from MIT, and we kind of just did a research project for the entire 6 weeks. And I thought it was really helpful, whether learning about science or what I want to do in the future, or whether it's personal responsibility or something like that. And I definitely used that summer thing I did in Boston for a lot of my essays. And I think, yeah, I thought that was one of the most helpful things I've ever done. Job-wise, I never, one of my regrets, I guess, was not having a job in high school. I guess if I could do it over again, I would probably get a job, whether it's for the experience or for the experience probably.
So for the first 2 summers of my high school experience, I went to debate camps because I debated a lot and I wanted to get better over the summer. But then my junior year, I also was at Boston University, but not for the same reason. I did a 3-week experimental psychology research program, which I took because I always wanted to take research in high school, but I never had like the slots and like the availability for classes during my high school experience. And then also I was gonna take AP research this year, and I knew I wanted to do a psychology topic. So I figured that could be useful to find mentors and like a topic potentially. As for jobs, I worked at Kumon from when I was 14 to when I was 17. And then I was poached and I got a job at Mathnasium senior year. So yeah, it's been pretty fulfilling. Like Andy said, I highly suggest getting a job.
In terms of like job, my only job was that I taught dance at Chinese school actually. I was a dance 1 teacher. But I mean, over the summer for me, I did science research at the Medical College Wisconsin. So that took up a large portion of my time. But then other than that, I kept up dance. Yeah, that's basically it. I just did science research and dance essentially over the summer. I would say that like like my big thing over summer is that you want to also just relax for a bit, like give yourself a little bit of time off after coming off school especially, but just find something that like you find interesting to do, not necessarily things that you just need to like fill your time or like pad your college application with. Just find something that you were like genuinely interested in doing, and that'll make it seem so much better.
So I didn't really do any like research or summer camps over the summers or anything like that. The summer before junior year, I interned for my local Democratic Party and for a congressional campaign, but that was pretty much it. For jobs, I didn't really have a consistent job. I worked 1 summer at McDonald's before my sophomore year, and that was pretty much all. But in terms of like summer before senior year, what I did was like I started working on my essays and like my college app like during that summer. And so that's like something that was really helpful for time management. So I would like highly recommend starting your essays during that summer and looking at your college research.
I agree with Magdalene. I think um, last summer I also was trying to start my college stuff. Um, but as for like previous summers, I think I mostly just stayed local. I like took a math, not even a class. It was, I can't even remember. It was just like a math thing at Marquette. I took like some coding classes at WCTC. Took like online classes for computer science and like math. Um, but then last summer, I actually got the two jobs I have now. So I had applied to like a summer program. It was like super prestigious, and I only applied once, so I didn't get in, unfortunately. But so I was like, I can't just sit around and do nothing. So I just like cold emailed a company in Milwaukee, like a startup, and I really liked what they were doing. It was like a tech, sort of like nutritional food startup, so sort of related to what I kind of wanted to do, but and they end up answering me back and saying, yes, like we'd love to have an intern. So I started interning there for the summer. And then when it came to like the start of school, they asked me to continue and I said yes. Um, and then I also started playing piano for Milwaukee Ballet. Um, so for any pianists out there, if you want to earn money, they pay really well. But yeah, it's a really cool job. It's like low key. It's really nice. So yeah.
Okay. The summer after my freshman year, I honestly really didn't do much because I wasn't sure what types of things I should do. I kind of figured things out more sophomore year. So the summer after sophomore year, I started a coding camp for kids in my area. Um, Basically, I felt like the computer science curriculum for middle schoolers was really lacking, and that like yeah, like the school district wasn't really doing enough to get kids like learning to code, so I made my own camp. Um, and also like another motivation for that was that I saw that in robotics, a lot of kids were coming into high school knowing absolutely nothing about computer science, and that like the software team would always be stuck with this like one person who actually knew what they were doing. So that was also trying to alleviate that problem. So kids would come into high school actually knowing what they were doing. Um, Besides the coding camp, um, the computer science teacher at Brookfield Central, the other high school in my district, was actually setting up a really cool internship with a software consulting company and a nonprofit. And I basically got in on that and I did web development for that nonprofit for that summer. After summer after June, yeah, summer after junior year, I ran my camp again. And I kind of wanted to like see the academia side of computer science rather than just like industry. So I cold emailed a couple professors and like luckily one of them ended up responding and I got to help out in their lab. I never held a job throughout high school, and that's definitely one thing I felt like was lacking. I feel like the experience of actually doing paid work is very much different from like constant internships and just running your own sorts of things because there's like more like responsibility, more accountability to it. Um, yeah. Um, General advice for like doing stuff in the summer, I'd say to avoid just going for like summer programs purely because a lot of those are for like colleges to like make more money honestly. Like um the worthwhile summer programs typically will be the more like selective research programs, but sometimes those are hard to get into. So I don't know, I'd always encourage just not being afraid to try and do your own thing, start something on your own, or just like cold email companies, professors, whoever, if you want to get something started.
So for me, I went to debate camp during the summer. summer, sophomore, junior, and senior year. Not really just because of colleges, but just because it was kind of important for like success during the regular season. In terms of jobs, I didn't have one freshman and sophomore year or junior year. I started working at Kumon, and I'm still doing that even though there's a coronavirus, so online sessions. And then summer before my senior year, I went to a Notre Dame camp called it was like some leadership seminar, but it was free and stuff, so that was nice. I went there for 2 weeks in addition to my debate camp. And I also worked at a congressional office for about a month. Everyone else basically said like the important things. I agree with a lot of, just the general sentiment. Try to do stuff that you're interested in. Also, don't try to like wait for the opportunity to just like show itself. Like, I know, like, for example, people like made their own camps and stuff. That's like a great idea if you feel like your area is missing something. Yeah.
All right, so that pretty much covers high school, and we'll be moving to questions related to preparing for the college admissions, which is similar to high school. But so the question is, how would you measure the importance of the parts needed for the college admissions process? So like GPA, activities, leadership roles, and other things like that.
How would I rank them? I think I would definitely rank like GPA and scores on probably the very bottom of the ladder. I mean, like once you meet a certain cutoff, it really doesn't matter all too much. You don't really have to worry about that stuff. I think the top of the list would probably be activities and essays. I'm not really sure which is more important because they're kind of related, right? You're going to be writing your essays on your activities, and I don't know. And without activities, you wouldn't have essays. I think that what really shows the uniqueness of your application is your activities, and for sure, I mean, I don't know, you got to do something to differentiate yourself from the million other people with 5.0s, 4.0 GPAs, and like perfect scores. So that would have to show out in your extracurriculars and stuff. I think making the most use of your summer where other people don't is one way to stand out for sure. And getting a head start on your essays is definitely very helpful. Like others have said, getting your SAT and ACT done with before, I don't know, I did it in the summer before my junior year. So getting that done with was very helpful for the summer of my senior year, where I could just focus on my activities and my essays and really get a head start over everyone else. And basically, the more time you spend on your essays, the better your application is going to be. So try to budget as much time for that as you can and get all the number stuff out of the way.
So I feel like every school is going to be a little different in how they weigh things in the application process. A friend actually showed me a resource. It's called Common Data Set online, where it actually, for each college, they mark off which one is like of high importance, which ones are of like little to no importance. So that's something like if you're really interested in certain schools that you should probably look up before applying. But I agree with Andy in that like the GPA and stuff after a certain cutoff, it really doesn't matter. I would say the most important thing is with your activities and your essay is to paint a cohesive picture of who you are as a person, because they're not looking for someone that does a million things like in a mediocre way. They want to see that you're like a genuine person who has genuine passions in certain areas. And I feel like that's what in your essays you need to actually stress about yourself to show that like you're not just a bot applying to 25 colleges, right? You're like actually genuinely interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, to echo what everyone else has been saying, sort of the same thing. The numbers are very much the baseline. As long as you have like a certain cutoff, you're fine. College admissions people don't really necessarily look at that too much because it is holistic. They're looking to see who you are as a person, like Erin said, how you fit into the framework of what their mission is in the college and what their class is going to be for that entire year. So again, like essays as Erin was saying, like you sort of want to build everything around this like one idea of like what you are. Maybe you're really interested in comp sci or something, like your activities should reflect that. Or maybe you're really interested in writing and like literature, then your activities and like the recommendations that you get should reflect that. So again, it's just more of finding out what you like and then going down that path to show that you've really actually gone down that path, you know, so that like your activities, your classes that you've been taking, the people who speak on your behalf, like on your letters of rec, that really reflects a much greater portion of who you are than just your test scores.
I agree with what pretty much everyone else said about GPA. Once you demonstrate like a certain level of academic competence, I don't think colleges really look at it anymore. So like the difference between a 3.9 and a 4.0 is really just minuscule. So like don't worry if you end up getting like a few B's throughout high school or anything. I would say like essays are probably like one of the most important parts, if not the most important part, because I think like a stellar essay can make up for other lackluster parts of your application, but like other things would not be able to make up for a not good essay. And so like essays are really like the one chance that you have on the application to show that you're like a real person that has like thoughts and feelings rather than just like a random robot on paper. And so like that's really your chance to like kind of appeal to the admissions officers in like a human way, I guess you would say. And then activities and leadership roles obviously go like hand in hand, and they're like also very important because it shows that you have like interests and passions and that like you're going to contribute to the college community once you get there. So like if you show like a certain direction that you're very interested in, like debate or robotics or one specific thing, then like that shows that you're going to continue to pursue that on a college campus and like you'll genuinely contribute. So that's also very important.
I agree with what most everyone has been saying about like GPA. Like honestly, I don't think it really matters anymore. Just because like everyone has a good GPA, so like we're all even on that part. But yeah, for like activities and leadership, I think they go hand in hand. Like you want to do things that you like and enjoy and are passionate about. And naturally, if you care about something, you're probably going to end up pursuing like a heavier role in that and probably becoming a leader in whatever activity that is. So I think over time, if you just first out like the first few years of high school, if you figure out what you really enjoy, then you'll probably end up, you know, contributing more heavily to those things that you actually like versus things that you don't really care about. And yeah, I also agree with my Glenn. I think essays are probably the most important, just because like once you're a senior, your activities and leadership roles and GPA, they're pretty much already like set. I mean, not set in stone, but you've already done a lot with that. So like essays are kind of your final push of showing colleges that you're unique and different from all the other people applying to your major or doing the same activities. So definitely work on those. And my number one regret, and I think a lot of people's, is just not spending enough time on those and starting them early enough. So definitely make sure your essays are good.
Yeah, everyone else basically covered everything. I think the most important idea really for admissions at colleges where the admissions rates keep declining further is like building a narrative as opposed to just like being good at things. So they want to see into like how you think as a person and like why you're interested in these things and how you explore these things instead of beyond just like I competed in this, like how did you apply the skills you got from these competitions and stuff like that. On essays, I'd say they're definitely probably the most important, honestly, because colleges don't really have any other way of seeing who you are as a person, like understanding your personality or how you think, how you approach problems and stuff like that. Especially for colleges that have more essay prompts or the quirky essay prompts like U Chicago or Stanford. It's a lot about like exposing your thought processes and like I guess like demonstrating your quirks since they're trying to be quirky too and stuff like that. Um, yeah, one of my biggest regrets was definitely also starting my essays too late. I, I, I honestly should probably start them in summer before before college applications are due, because like you're going to throw out a lot of the essays you write when you realize that like this just sounds like a bunch of like trash. So like it's the college essay writing is an entire experience, and you should definitely start early and just write a bunch of essays, and then you'll eventually find what you actually want to talk about and what you think is most like genuine and most valuable.
Yeah, a lot of people said great things that are interesting. It's kind of hard to find something unique to say. Let's see. I think about test grades and GPA is true, but also just like you do have to pay attention to that. So everyone is kind of operating on the presumption that your GPA is high. But if you're already coming into the game and your GPA is not high, then you're already at a huge disadvantage at the outset. So just make sure that you kind of recognize that and prioritize that before anything else. And then essays, I also agree, are incredibly important. And it's kind of skewed in that way because not everyone is great in humanities, not everyone's a great writer, but like for some reason, like if you're not a great writer, it's really hard to get in really great colleges because they expect you to write good essays. So it's kind of something that you really have to work on if you think, oh well, but like my math or my STEM skills will allow me to get in. But like the issue is like every college has an essay, even if it's like MIT. So you really need to be able to write the essay well. Seek help, try to find a friend maybe if you're struggling, a teacher, etc. Besides that, I don't really have anything else to add.
All right, so I think because a lot of the same things are said, I'm going to go backwards from now based off of alphabetical order, just so some new ideas and you can get your thoughts out a bit earlier. So the next question is, did you visit any colleges, and were the visits important to you and your college decision?
So are you saying I'm going first or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I visited colleges. So I think the summer before my junior year, I went on the East Coast. I visited some colleges like Georgetown. I visited like Harvard, Yale, some other Ivies. And then before my senior year, I also did a couple of visits like in the Midwest. So I visited Northwestern. I didn't visit Michigan or Emory, but I went there for debate tournaments and debate camps. So, I mean, pretty much visits. And they were important for me, not just only in the like not just only to see the college campus and get a feel of what it's like to live there or study there, but also like some of the colleges that some colleges that I applied to, like Georgetown, had like debate programs, and there were like directors of debate who were like full time on campus. So it was nice for me to be able to just meet with them and talk about debating at that college. And see like if they had any tips for admissions. So that's something just unique to me, I think, was kind of important for college visits.
I never went on like formal college visits for the purpose of like admissions. However, like throughout like middle school and high school, I did end up on campuses and just like seeing colleges. Like I visit my sister in New York, so I got to see Columbia. I when my dad was in California, I visited because he was at Stanford and stuff like that. So I feel like maybe I did miss out on not actually going on like intentional visits, because it's definitely a good way to like understand what the college culture is more like and like see what life would be like there. But I guess I kind of got my like understanding of different like colleges' personalities and stuff from just like talking to alumni and stuff like that. So yeah.
So I think I ended up going to most of the colleges I applied to, like I visited them previously. Um, the summer before senior year, I think, well, my family went on a pretty large like East Coast tour of like, you know, the Ivies and some other schools over there. So it was nice seeing like all the schools. Um, but overall, I feel like honestly, college visits, if you don't end up going on them, they're not the end of the world. Um, just because I don't think many people actually have that like gut feeling when they go on a campus, like, oh, this like I belong here, or like I'm gonna go here, like this is the school for me. Personally, I didn't feel that feeling at any of the colleges I went to. Of course, like some of them I thought they were nice or whatever, but like in the end, I think that was mostly just due to location. And since I visited in the summer, like there weren't really students around. So it was just like an empty campus. Like it was just like the buildings. So honestly, like if you don't get to go to like the schools that you're applying to, I don't think it's the end of the world. You can just do a lot of research like online. A lot of schools have like YouTube videos showing their campus, and you can do a lot of like figure out things without actually going to the campus.
So the spring break of my sophomore year, me and my mom kind of went on like a big like East Coast tour of a bunch of schools. And then like anytime we'd kind of like travel to like a city, we'd kind of just like sometimes visit a college if it was there. So like we visited Georgetown when we went to DC and things like that. But like Ruthie said, I agree. It's like not really the end of the world if you don't visit the college, just because I don't think it's super necessary in order to like apply and like go there. But I do think that it is like sort of helpful because through like the tours and the information sessions that they give, you kind of get like a general sense of like what the college looks for in students and like what they value really, I guess, about their college. And that helps you like write your essays and like tailor your application specifically towards a college. So in that aspect, I think it's helpful, but like, I don't really think it's super necessary to visit a college before like you apply there or like end up going there.
Yeah, like everyone else has said, I know a lot of people don't have the luxury of visiting all these colleges because it is very expensive to go on a huge long like road trip and visit all of these colleges along the coast. But I think my biggest advice would just be like there's a bunch of online stuff, and especially in the age of COVID, you know, those things are being utilized. That's how all of us essentially made our college decisions, because we weren't able to actually go to the campus like we were supposed to. So that, unfortunately, like it can't necessarily mimic what you would actually experience when you were actually, if you were to be actually there. But I think it's a close second, and I think the colleges do a really good job of accommodating that. So again, college visits, they're optional. Like no college, very few colleges actually nowadays track what is called demonstrated interest, where they like actually keep track of how much you've like how much interest that you've shown in this college, whether that be like actual visits or like info sessions. So again, like these things aren't necessary. They're helpful, but only to a certain extent.
I agree with everything that's been said so far, but building off of that, I feel like Lisa brought up the point of demonstrated interest. If you are interested in a school that has expressed that they do value demonstrated interest and you can't go and visit virtually, never be afraid of asking questions via phone call or email to their admissions office, because that's another way to express like your interest in a school, I guess. Without actually physically being on the campus. I will say I'm glad I visited some of the campuses that I was interested in, because that's what led me to figuring out that I absolutely did not want to apply to NYU because I really hated the campus and I couldn't see myself being there. No disrespect to NYU, it's a really good school. I just could not live there. But I feel like that you can also gauge from like an online virtual tour. Wow. Yeah, that's something you could see for the environment and the feel of it.
I mean, yeah, for sure. So what I think the purpose of the college tour is mostly to get a feel of the college, right? But once you go on 5, 6 college tours, they all kind of all just blend together. Everyone just talks about how many clubs they have, the Greek life, the housing, whatever, whatever. You can't really get that great of a feel other than the environment of the college or the campus. So I think the best way to accomplish that purpose is just to talk to alumni or talk to current students. I think is probably the best way to go about doing that, especially because they'll tell you stuff that like the tour guides won't tell you, or the tour guides have been told not to tell you. They'll tell you more about like the truth of the college, kind of what people don't want out there, like both the positives and the negatives of the college. So I think that's probably the best way to get to know a college that you want to apply to, or you're trying to decide whether or not you want to go to.
All right, so I think we're gonna keep this pattern, the reverse alphabet. It seems to work. So the next set of questions is about actually applying and kind of what you went through in the college process. So the first question is a bit weird, but like, was there a sequence to your writing? Like, did you write your common essay first and then your safety essays, safety college essays first, or was there a pattern, or was it kind of just as you went through the list?
For me, I definitely worked on common application first. So I wrote actually like 2 versions of it. One, like, so like 2 completely different Common App essays. And that actually helped because there were some colleges that I could reuse a Common App essay, not as a Common App essay, but as a supplemental, and just shorten it a little bit. So I definitely first started with Common App essays, and then I worked on supplementals. And then for like the YX college essay, like that one to me was like my least favorite to write because I didn't want it to sound like it was just like listening about a bunch of things. So like I kind of came up with like a framework where it was like a day in the life. So I would just like write me like spending one day at that campus and like all the activities I would do to make it a little more interesting. And that was the kind of thing I did after supplementals. And then in terms of early action and regular decision, obviously I worked on all the early action stuff first, but then in the interim between early action and regular decision, the way I prioritize my essays, where I would only work on the regular decision essays that I knew I would still want to apply to, even if I got into like my top early action. So early action for me was just, I think, Michigan and Georgetown. So like I worked on the Harvard and Yale essay because I was like, okay, even if I get into Georgetown, those are 2 colleges I definitely still want to apply to, even if in any case. So it would be more efficient just in case, you know, I got in and then I had to scrap some other essays. Yeah.
So for me, when I started writing essays, I first grouped them by like prompt type. So like what challenges did you overcome, or and stuff like that. And then I just wrote whatever essays would have the most overlap first. So of course that would be the Common App, since I had to submit that to most schools. And then it'd be like, what challenge did you overcome, and then like why this school. I think I kind of did something similar to Zidao, in that I wrote like 2 different versions of a Common App, so I could have one that could sometimes be recycled as a supplemental, and then I'd have like different writing styles for safeties versus my reach schools. So I'd try to be, I'd write essays that were more risky and were like more quirky for the reach schools, and I wrote more like standard, like straightforward essays for my safeties, stuff like that. Yeah.
I wrote my Common App essay first, and I was actually really good with time for that one. I started in the summer, and I think I I went through like 3 drafts, but they were all pretty much on the same topic since I kind of knew what I wanted to write about for a while. But I think I finished that like by the start of school, which was really good. But obviously from there, I started working on the like early action school that I was applying to. So that one was Stanford. They had a lot of essays. It was probably at least like 8 or something. So as for order, I just think I went on based on the like which ones I knew I had an idea on, like of what I wanted to write about. But there was no like specific like after that it wasn't like I'm just gonna do all the safety schools essays first and then like the reach schools. But also just based because I procrastinated a lot, so I didn't have as much time as I wanted to on writing my essays. I sort of just did all of them. So
So I also did my Common App essay in the summer. So I finished that by like mid-August, which was nice because then I didn't have to worry about it throughout the rest of the school year. But then when it came to the rest of the supplementals, things were a little bit more iffy. So I did my early action essays first, obviously, and I started that in the summer. But then like once school got started, I got sort of busy and then I put it off for a while, and then I finished it like at the due date. And so after early action was done, I kind of just didn't really have a particular order. I just went based on when the applications were due. So some of them were like due earlier than others, so I just worked on those first. Yeah, I didn't really have a particular process or order of going about it, but yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah, I think the general consensus is that you always start with your Common App because that's the biggest thing you have to finish. That goes to every school essentially that you apply to. And then it just starts with the supplements. You know, I did supplements for my like so-called safeties earlier because those were sort of your practice run, I guess. Those could be a little less of the caliber that I really wanted to give to my other colleges. But again, like after a certain point, all of these college essays really, most of them really do become quite repetitive. They always ask like the traditional why us college, and then there's something usually about like either an extracurricular or something that you've learned, et cetera, et cetera. So at this, so after a while, you can really just recycle essays. But a point of caution would be, please don't apply to like a 5 million schools. I know that's like now with the Common App, you can apply to so many schools very easily, but a word of caution against that, it's that like after a point, your essays, you can really tell that they're not really tailored to that school, and college admissions people can read that, you know, like it's easy to just sort of fall into the mindset, well, if I just like send off a bunch of essays, I know one of them will like hit somewhere. But honestly, like that's pretty risky. So I would say like take time to know what colleges you want to apply to, and then write your essays like and actually like work on individual essays. Don't just like copy and paste them over from one doc to the next, because people can actually tell if you like genuinely care about this college or if you put in the effort. Like I know there's like 8 Ivies and most people are like, well, this is my one time to just shoot everything. But like you have to take into consideration these 8 Ivies or like these top 20, 30 schools are very different from one another. So just a word of caution.
I agree with everything everyone said so far. One thing I will say is the Common App is really nice because they lay out every single college you're applying to. They say like when all of your materials are due for that specific college and when all of your essays for that specific colleges are due. So I kind of prioritize things in terms of like due date, when the deadline is, as like kind of a benchmark, like this needs to get done before like this college, right? If I don't have that done, it's kind of game over. And then I feel like addressing Vincent's question as to the disadvantage of applying early action, I would say it depends on the school, because if you look, U Chicago they only 5% of their admitted freshman class is accepted regular decision. So if you really want to go to that school, you probably want to apply early. But other schools like Harvard, for example, there's really no benefit to applying early. People with stronger applications are probably applying earlier because they have all of their materials ready earlier. So if you feel like you're solid and you're 100% ready to apply to that school early, go for it. But if you're feeling iffy, probably wait until regular decision. But it really varies from school to school. Otherwise, I agree with everything everyone said so far. I don't really have much to add on that front.
All right, so essay advice. I think I did basically what Xander did, what he said earlier. He said he did his Common App essay first, which I would definitely get that just out of the way in the summer. Get it before you start get it done before you even start your senior year, and then just set it aside. One piece of really good advice my college counselor gave me was to just once you finish your Common App, just put it away. Don't even look at it, because when you look at it again and again, you're going to want to keep changing things, and then that's going to pull you away from the other equally important essays that you're going to have to write. So I would definitely do that. Also, what I did was do what Xander did, which was write essays which overlapped. So what I would do was make a big spreadsheet of like all the prompts and stuff, and then you would be able to see like what kind of general categories they fall into, kind of like what challenges do you face, how did you overcome them, like I don't know, why engineering, why major, why arts and sciences, stuff like that. And then you can take the ones that have common areas and write essays with that first, because you can take chunks of one essay and then reuse them in a different essay for another college. The one supplemental I would say that you would probably have to customize for every college and don't really reuse stuff is probably the YX college, because that's where you're really going to stand out if you do your research, if you really know why you want to go to what college. And what you want to put there is more like what about the college appeals to you, and then how you're going to really contribute to the college when you get there, kind of like what clubs and stuff appeal to you, what are you going to do, because the admissions AOs really want to see that you're going to contribute to the college community once you get on campus, and you can show them that through your Y college essay. Also, about the applying early, I totally agree with what Erin said. One word of caution about early decisions is that it's completely binding, as I'm sure you know. So if financial concerns is something that you and your family need to pay attention to, I would just avoid ED. Because if you get stuck going to a good school that you like, but with a package that's really expensive, you're going to be graduating with a lot of student loans and stuff, and that's not something you want to really have to deal with in the future if you could have just avoided that. Other general essay advice, I guess, is have your peers go over it, but I don't know, pick and choose what advice you take on your essays, because everyone's going to have a different view on your essay if you're going to get it peer edited. Because the essay is mainly about you, right? If your friends have one thought about this, and another friend might have a different, completely contrasting idea about what to write. So I would just say go with what your gut tells you, because that's going to be what's most true to who you are.
All right, so how did you choose the people who wrote your recommendation letters?
For me, I chose people that, so first of all, find a teacher that likes you, and that's kind of important. So even if you think even if you hear good things about the teacher writing rec letters, but if you don't feel like the teacher likes you, then obviously don't go for that. And then also, don't just choose random teachers. Choose teachers that are kind of correlated with your subject area or interest. So for me, I wanted to go into political science or history. So I asked my AP US history teacher to write me a rec letter. And in general, showing in the recommendation letters that you're interested in a certain subject is going to be pretty important for your college application. And then Also, make sure you have like a decent relationship with a teacher. So if like you're somebody that like, you know, in their class you always kind of like sit in the back and you don't really say much and they don't know too much about you. Like even if you do get a good grade in that class, honestly, I don't think it'd be a good recommendation letter because the teacher can't really say much about your like personality, etc. So like it's likely that they'll give you a more generic one. So yeah, just making sure that when you're figuring out who to write or who to ask to write, you think about whether or not they'll actually be able to know you deep enough to write a meaningful letter. Because I think college admissions officers can easily tell, like, if this is like a canned letter that like people write, or if this is one that actually like, if this teacher actually knows a lot about you.
It's pretty similar to Zidao. I just went for teachers in the area I wanted to end up studying. But besides that, I wanted to keep in mind what teachers like actually knew me as a person. So don't necessarily like pick teachers that you've recently had always. I ended up having my freshman year math teacher writing one just because throughout all of high school we like kept in touch and we just kind of like talk on a normal basis. He'd give me like YouTube video recommendations randomly and stuff like that. So sometimes you have to find where the like personal relation matters more than maybe the subject relevancy. But in my case, it kind of worked out since I am in computer science math area. But yeah, the personal relation typically will be more important because they're less likely to end up just writing a like templated letter that they do for all the students that ask them and actually put a lot into it.
I agree with what most everyone or Xander and Zidao has been saying, but yeah, I think I just mostly asked teachers who knew me well, like again with that like personal connection. So I asked my math teacher who I'd had for 2 years, and at least like for our school, like the calc classes are like really, they're like a unit sort of. So everyone, it's like you just get to know everyone really well, and like with your teacher. So I asked my math teacher, and then I also asked an English teacher, who I'd also had for 2 years, and just because I thought she would know me well for having her in class. And then I think everyone has to have a recommendation from like their counselor. So I had that. And then I had a lot of letter of recs that I asked for. I also asked my principal just because I think my junior year I was trying to start a TED Talk event at my school, which didn't end up happening, but that whole entire year I met with the principal like every month. So like through that process, I just like got to know him and he got to know me more than just like a top student. So I thought he could say something that might show something out like different than just my teachers. And then I also asked my piano teacher, just because again, I thought maybe what she would say about me was something different or showed like a new light on me, versus just like in an academic standpoint, like something out of just school.
So I went about rec letters a little bit differently because what I essentially did was in the very beginning of junior year, I kind of evaluated all the teachers that I had and like kind of like saw like, oh, this one likes me, this one doesn't. And then like figured out who I wanted to ask for my rec letter by like the end of September of my junior year. And so like after that, I kind of like, I guess like behaved accordingly in their classes. So like I would participate a lot and like ask a lot of questions like in those specific classes with those teachers. And like I'd go in like after hours and like ask questions and things like that. So like that way they would get to know me well throughout the year because like I already knew that I was going to ask them for a rec letter. So like basically what I did was throughout my junior year, I just like cultivated a relationship with the teachers that I liked and wanted to ask for a rec letter from. And then I did the same thing with my counselor, because obviously a counselor recommendation is required. So I'd like go in a lot, ask for like help with my college apps. I'd like give him like updates on like what I was doing in extracurriculars and things like that. So that way, like I knew that all my teachers and my counselor would have like good things to write about me. So I kind of did that, which was like helpful, because then I knew that like I had like a steady set of 2 teachers that would write good things about me. So yeah, that was pretty much how I picked my teachers.
Yeah, like most people said, you have the traditional counselor one, and then you have one from like a science or STEM class, and then you have the one from like more humanities or like a language teacher even. I had my English and I had my math teacher, and people say like recommendation letters are something that you can't really control, but it is something that you can control to an extent. So like just building relationships with your teachers, you know, like I was like, I don't know about you guys, but I was like straight homies with these 2 teachers that I asked letters of rec from. You know, like I hung out in their offices. One of the people that I like asked for a letter of rec, eventually she left the year before I was a senior, but like we grabbed coffee and stuff, etc. But just be like find your teachers as sort of like more of a friend and less as an authority figure. And I think that can really help you in terms of like writing a good letter of rec, because yes, they want to see how you perform in terms of classrooms, like in the setting of a classroom, but they also want to see how you perform just like as a normal human being, you know, outside of the academic space. And I think people can really only speak to that if they know you more as like a friend.
I will say, building off of the whole counselor recommendation, recommendation. I feel like building a relationship with your counselor is pretty important. I know a lot of people at my school who saw their counselor maybe once or twice, and they say like they're basically useless, and I think that's totally not true. I built a relationship with my counselor. I visited her frequently, and not only is she probably going to write me a better recommendation as opposed to someone who never went in to see her, but also like your counselor has access to a lot of opportunities that you might not be able to find on your own. So even beyond just that recommendation, they can give you access to those or like let you know about certain opportunities. As for my other recommendation letters, I asked my math teacher, because she was going to have me for 2 out of my 4 years in high school. And then I asked my AP bio teacher, because she helped me write a lot of my recommendations and like apply for different opportunities and programs and scholarships. And then for additional recommendation letters, I asked one of my bosses at Kumon, because I did the Kumon program since I was 8, and I finished the math program in 8th grade and then immediately took a job. So I figured they've known me most of my life, so if anyone can write me a good recommendation letter, it would be them. And then I asked my research mentor for AP research, because I did work very closely with them during the whole process for that class. I will say with additional recommendation letters, you have to be kind of careful, because certain schools don't really like to see additional letters of recommendations. So if you look online for the schools you're applying to, some will only allow 1 additional rec, some will allow 2, some won't allow any at all. And then, yeah, I feel like be careful with your additional recs, because they don't want another teacher. They want someone that can actually provide a different insight in you that hasn't been shown before by a different person that you chose to ask for a letter of rec from. So yeah.
All right. So I got 2 letters of recommendation from my teachers. One was my AP Physics teacher, who was also my AP Chemistry teacher, who was also my tennis coach. So I really got to, who was also my Physics C teacher as well. So I got to really build a good relationship with him throughout all of my classes and on the tennis field. And I think that's one thing you really want to look for when you're choosing teachers to ask like for your recommendations. You want someone who knows you in many aspects, preferably not just in the classroom, but also like outside of the classroom, what you do, extracurriculars, get to know them as like a friend or a confident, someone you can really talk to, say hi to in the hallway, stuff like that. Apart from that, I guess if you're going to if you want to apply to a STEM major, if you're shaping your application around you wanting to do engineering, robotics, whatever in college, you should definitely have at least one STEM teacher do your recommendation. And then the other teacher really should be someone who has watched you grow like through high school, who has known you like, I don't know, more personally than just grading your stuff and knowing you as the good student who always answers my questions. You should really like talk to them about what you do outside of school, what they do outside of school, and really try to build a more personal relationship on that level. And I also agree with Erin about the additional recommendations. One thing the college counselor at my school always said was, the thicker the file, the thicker the applicant. Make sure that if you're going to be asking for an additional recommendation, like thicker as in denser, as in less intelligent, like, I don't know. So make sure if you're going to be asking for additional recommendation letters, they're going to be showing something different than what your other teachers have said before. Make sure that they don't just reiterate that, oh my God, he's such a good student, he always answers and raises his hand in class. Make sure it shows a different aspect, work or volunteering or something like that. And if you really don't think it adds that much, don't add it into your application. Just don't ask for it, because you're going to be making the AO slog through another 500, 600 words. And when they're reading thousands upon thousands of applications, they're just going to be tired of reading your application at that point as well.
All right, so we have a couple more questions, but to save some time for the Q&A, I'll just ask one more question and then get to the Q&A for the chat. And then after this question, if you have a question for the group, you can go down to the bottom chat button, and then you can enter your own question in there, and then we'll pick and choose a couple of good ones. So what are some scholarships that you think upcoming applicants should look out for, or maybe that you've done and you think were worth it?
So, I mean, a lot of people say there's a whole bunch of scholarships, and that's like kind of true. So, but you have to definitely look for them. Like, they won't fall into your lap. For high school, like your own high school usually does a bunch of smaller scholarships that you can apply for within your school. And then there's a lot of other scholarship opportunities outside of your school. So first, obviously, you can do like the PSAT, merit scholarship, stuff like that. And if you're good at standardized testing, that can be a pretty good route there. And then you can also apply for like, so like I know like in Homestead, for example, there's like a scholarship committee that reviews applications from seniors who are applying for scholarships. And then consider like if you're doing a like extracurricular or sport, sometimes schools give scholarships for that. So I know like some schools like Emory and Michigan gave like debate scholarships. Like Emory gave like 2 full rides out just for debate, which is a little unusual. And then there's like a bunch of other big scholarships. Those are a lot harder to get, like a Coca-Cola scholarship, for example. It's one I'm familiar with. So like you can also spend a lot of time applying for those, but it's much less likely that you'll like get one than compared to like a smaller scholarship. So if you are applying for those, make sure you apply for like a bunch of them, and don't like spend a whole bunch of time just doing like one scholarship essay, because there are like hundreds of thousands of kids applying for that same scholarship.
Yeah, Zidao basically covered everything. For the Elmbrook kids, I guess, there are like 2 main scholarships that the district can provide. One of them's from the Elmbrook Education Fund, and that one's actually like really accessible because 30 graduating seniors get $1,500, which is really nice. And there's also a Friends of Fine Arts scholarship for anyone who's into like forensics, orchestra, band, anything in the realm of the fine arts. That one's also pretty accessible, and it's I think 500 or something like that. I feel like in general, there are a lot of scholarships out there, but a lot of them are pretty niche. So you'll typically want to look into like whatever clubs you're in, whatever activities, and see if those specifically have scholarships. Like I know a good amount of colleges provide specific scholarships for people who participated in FIRST Robotics in high school. National Honor Society has a scholarship. Yeah, in general, it'll depend on what like type of activities you do, because those typically will give you access to more of the specific scholarships. Oh, I don't know if this will be a thing in the future, but there is a Minecraft scholarship out there for all the gamers where you just write an essay about why you find Minecraft valuable and stuff, and it's $2,000. That might be very competitive, but I think it's pretty cool.
I agree with what everyone's been saying. I think personally I didn't apply to that many scholarships just because a lot of them require a lot of applications, and by the time that I was done writing like college applications, I was just sort of like done. But yeah, there's like the national merit, which again is just like through the PSAT. So if you test well, you'll probably end up getting that. Um, and if you go to Arrowhead, they do have like a scholarship. I think like the maximum amount of money you'll receive is like $1,000, just because they give a lot of scholarships. So definitely look forward like to that, because the application isn't too bad. But as of other applications for scholarships, I personally didn't do too many of those, so I think other people might have better insight on scholarships in general than me.
I was kind of the same as Ruthie. After applying to all the colleges, I kind of got essay fatigue, and so I didn't really apply to that many scholarships. But like everyone else said, there's like the really popular ones like National Merit Scholarship, the Coca-Cola Scholars, and things like that. But what I ended up kind of doing was just like relying on need-based financial aid from colleges, just because like a lot of top schools give like very good need-based aid, and so they just like give out enough scholarships where, for me at least, it kind of ended up being around the same price as like in-state tuition for Madison. So that's like a really good thing to have. A lot of colleges have like a need-based calculator kind of thing, or net price calculator, where you can just like type in like your income info, and then they'll like give you an estimate of how much it will cost and like how much aid that they'll give you if you end up going to their school. So that's like a really helpful tool as well. But yeah, in terms of like other scholarships, I don't really know that much.
I'd say apply to local scholarships because you have a much higher chance of actually getting those. The national scholarships, while they may seem great because you're getting like what, $40,000, it's very, very competitive, because the entire globe is essentially applying for like 10 spots. So I'd recommend more local scholarships. You can just Google like Wisconsin high school senior scholarships, etc., and they usually pull up like a list or something. In terms of like scholarships that schools offered, like Megan said, there's the traditional like need-based aid that most schools give, but also you can also look for merit scholarships. These are a little bit more selective, but there are some schools that give out merit scholarships to sort of entice students to apply for them. So the ones that like immediately pop into my head are like Vanderbilt, Emory, USC, even like Notre Dame. So like very good schools do offer merit scholarships. They become less frequent, I guess, the higher you go up the ranks, but they're there, and they're a really great option for people who like, I mean, no one wants to spend like $500,000 on a college, on their college, like 4 years of college. So merit scholarships at colleges are definitely something that you should look at.
I will say, with national merit scholarships, that's actually helped me personally a lot. especially in like determining which colleges I would end up applying to. A lot of schools do give out very generous packages if you are a national merit finalist. For example, if you're into political science, not STEM, because the school is not very good for STEM, Fordham will give a full ride to you if you are a national merit finalist. And looking into that is like something that's you should probably consider if you are good at testing. Along with that, with the local scholarships, I feel like were super helpful because I'm in choir. You know, there are scholarships that certain schools can give if you are in choir, if you are deemed like a leader in certain clubs and stuff like that, if your school is associated with a certain organization. So that was really helpful too. Also, don't be afraid to appeal your merit scholarship. Because I was given an offer by Northeastern for being a national merit finalist, and I sent them an email and I said, okay, well, here are the packages, like here's how much school is going to cost for me at these other institutions I was accepted into, and then like this is the package you're giving me right now. Is there a way to bridge the cost? And then they actually ended up giving me a couple $1,000 extra from that email. So just like there's nothing you can lose. They can't rescind their acceptance for you asking about appealing your merit award. So I guess that's something that you can also approach as well, that you shouldn't be afraid of trying to do. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, everyone said basically what's needed to be said about national merit. I mean, to be honest, if you make finalists, if your score makes the semifinalist cutoff, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed finalist. Like 80-90% of everyone becomes a finalist. And honestly, you don't really have to spend much time on the essay anyways. I kind of just cut off like a paragraph from my Common App essay and just pasted it in, and I got national merit finalist. So that's pretty easy. Right. National scholarships are cool, great college boost, but very difficult to get. You really have to stand out like nationally to get it. Co-scholar, whatever. One local scholarship that's really nice. I think it was $10,000 is the Herb Cole scholarship. That one, there's actually quite a lot of winners in Wisconsin. I think there were like almost 100 something winners of $10,000 each in Wisconsin. And that application might take some time, but there's a very good chance that you'll be able to win that scholarship, and it's a lot of money. So that's pretty cool. Other scholarships, I agree with everyone else. Basically, look for niche stuff. I don't know. If you're really good at tennis or if you're really good at soccer, look for local soccer scholarships. If you fit into a certain ethnic group or a certain financial group, look for stuff that caters to that. Look for stuff as specific as possible, because that will minimize the number of applicants you have to compete against to get the scholarship.
All right, so I think we can move on to the chat questions. And by the way, for any of the seniors, if you think one of the questions is more tailored to you, you can click on their name on the from name to everyone. You can click on their name, type a response, and it will send a response directly to them. So if you want to answer a question individually. So now I'll begin just pulling some questions from the chat. And I saw one that was kind of interesting. It'll be a bit beforehand. So on the topic of private college application counselors, what are your experiences with them, and are they worth it? If anybody has had any experiences with that.
I mean, I could, if no one else wants to answer this question, I guess I can jump in. I never really had a private college counselor. I never really did that, like hired anyone to do that. And I know a couple friends from my school who have hired this guy in Brookfield. I think his name is Bernie or something. I don't remember quite clearly. But I'll be honest, I don't really know how much it helps. From what like my friends had told me what he said, he kind of just gives you advice on your essays. I don't really know how much advice like that stuff will really help you. I mean, most of the stuff you can just find online, especially with the internet. A lot of good advice, good resources, good, I don't know, question and answer sessions with past college students. That stuff will give you pretty much all the information you really need. And if it were me, right, I wouldn't really want an adult interfering I don't know, someone who really doesn't know you all that well, who really only knows you from your resume, telling you what to write about. Because your essay is mainly supposed to be about you, about your personality, about how you think. And he's not really going to be able to do that for you. And he was really expensive, and I don't think it's worth the cost at all.
I'd say your best bet would be to use your peers and to use your English teachers. Although English teachers might not necessarily be well versed in what consists or what comprises of a college application essay, they're an English teacher, so they know how to write. So I think your best bet would be to go to them. Your college counselor is always a good option too, but in the end, I think you just have to speak true to yourself. You know, your essay should reflect what you want to come across the colleges. And I think the more that you ask for people to sort of like read over, the more that they put their input into it, the more that you will lose like the piece of yourself in that essay. So I think pick and choose, like other people have said, pick and choose your advice. I'd say go to people who are like good at writing, English teachers, people, your friends that are good at writing, etc. But in the end, it should reflect yourself.
I agree with everyone else that I don't really think a private college counselor is really necessary, just because like you have so many online resources. Like the college counselors, like someone mentioned before, they help you a lot with your essays, but I don't really think that's super necessary because you have online resources. Things that I used when I was writing my college essays, like some websites like break down the prompts for you, and then they'll like kind of give you suggestions for like what you can write about and like encourage you to think about the question in certain ways. So like I use like College Essay Advisors a lot and College Vine and like things like that to break down essay prompts. And then other things like college counselors do, I think like if you work with them early on in high school, they'll sometimes like help recommend like certain activities or like extracurriculars for you, depending on like what your strengths are. But I don't really think that's super necessary as long as you have like a certain sense of self-reflection and you know yourself well enough to know what you're good at and what you can improve on, and like activities you can do based on your strengths and stuff. So like when it comes to that, as long as you know yourself well enough and know your strengths and weaknesses, I don't really think a college counselor is necessary or worth it.
So I'm seeing a lot of two very similar questions. So I'm just kind of summing these two up. So any of you guys can answer either of them. So the first one is, how important are sports in your college application? As well as how do you incorporate your interests, hobbies, and experiences into your essays?
So in terms of sports, I don't really. So I was out of a swim team. I actually swam club competitively for a while, but then I kind of like eased off in high school, and I actually quit my senior year just because of other extracurricular commitments. And in my opinion, sports can be an important aspect if you're really really good at it. So like if you're like a captain, like a varsity captain or something like that, then that could be obviously a big part of your application. In addition, I know like someone from my school who was like a really good rower got into Yale based off of just like being recruited for crew or rowing. So obviously, if you're a monster or something like that, keep going and kudos to you. But in general, if you're just like, I feel like if you're like if you do it mostly just for recreation and you do it just to stay fit stuff, it's not as important as other extracurricular activities. Your volunteering or like your more academic type extracurriculars, because I mean colleges, like unless you're going to be good enough to be on their team, colleges don't really care as much about how athletically proud like your athletic skills as much as how you'll contribute to their intellectual environment. So I think that's my personal take. And then the second question was, how do you incorporate extracurriculars, etc., into your essays? I don't think there's like a one sort of like framework for doing that, but I think in general you want to think about first like what you got out of the extracurricular. So what did it teach you? And how can you like make it and how you can like have some original spin. So don't just like, list out what you did and stuff, but like try to think about like maybe an instance, like a specific like example of during the extracurricular, like something happened, or you learned something new. And it really depends on what the extracurricular is, so I can't speak too much to that. I don't know if anyone else has any other advice. Sure, they'd love to hear it.
I would say for sports, I was in cross country and track all 4 years. But as for like college, I don't think it really like helped me at all. I mean, I was on JV. There's like only 8 people out of a team of 80 that can be on varsity. So like, I don't know, unless you're really good, like, they probably don't contribute that much. But I just did it mostly because I enjoyed the team aspect and it was a nice break from just studying all day. And honestly, like sports for me was a lot of where my social life kind of took over, just because otherwise I'd be busy doing stuff for extracurriculars or like just studying. So it was nice to just go and run miles outside with your friends. But obviously that takes different forms for each person. So but for the second question, I agree with what Zidao was saying. Like, um, I think for essays in general, like for like activities, the more focused you are on one aspect or like the more specific you are on something, the better. Because if you just talk about your general experience, like it just turns out to be like, yeah, like you said, just a list of what you did. But if you focus on like one day or like 1 hour, just one specific moment, just for all your essays, it makes it like way more personal and very unique. So that if someone picked up your essay like from the street and just read it, it wouldn't be just like, there's a ton of people that do, I don't know, play piano or something. But if you just talk about one specific lesson you learned at one day or whatever, that just is way more unique to you. Than colleges will differentiate you from other people that do the same activity from you.
I think when it comes to sports, it's really not that important unless like you're getting recruited for it. I didn't incorporate sports at all in my application. But about the second question about incorporating like extracurriculars and stuff in your essays, what I personally did is I didn't really talk about extracurriculars in my essays. I used that as like an opportunity to kind of talk about like other aspects of like just my general personality, I guess. But I think when it comes to certain extracurricular essays, a lot of them are like overdone, where it kind of ends up being like, I got injured playing my sport, but then I made a comeback and then I scored the winning goal or whatever in our state championship or something like that. And so like, while it's obviously like a tale of like personal growth and like important to you, admissions officers tend to see that like a lot. And so it has like less of an effect on them. And so like, basically my general advice would be to like talk less about your extracurriculars in your essay, because like you already talk about your extracurriculars in the activity section of the Common App. And so they already know what you all did or what you did like throughout high school. So like my advice would be to take the essay section to take it in a different direction and showcase different things about you that you want the admissions officers to know. And like if you do talk about extracurriculars, I think it would just be like best to like put a different spin on it rather than just like a normal like telling what you did and like why you did it and things like that.
I mean, yeah, definitely stay away from the sports injury essays. That's very overdone and very overused kind of trope that's seen everywhere in essays like that. I mean, I think that's whether or not sports is important to your college application or not is the wrong question to be asking. I think participating in like sports in high school it's not really for the college applications, to be honest. It's not going to add that much. It's more for the experience, what you can learn and the friendships you build from it. And if you want to use that in your application, don't really write about winning. Don't write about the sport, but write about the moments, the experience, like the smaller stuff, not just like winning the match or winning the game, but like the moments of camaraderie or the moments of, I don't know, working together as a team or helping pick someone up who's lagging behind or something like that. That stuff will really show your personal values more so than you broke your arm and then you worked harder and you won the final match or something at state.
All right, so are there any other questions? I think those two kind of covered a lot.
Someone asked if a freshman teacher wrote the letter of rec, since it's not the most recent, will it be an issue? And my take on that is no, if you have a good relationship with your teacher. I think someone had a freshman teacher write them a letter of recommendation. I'm not sure who. Xander is raising his hand. But so like he said, like he kept in touch with the teacher all 4 years, and he talked to them outside of school and stuff. And I think like the teacher sent him like YouTube videos or something. So, if you have a good relationship with your teacher, then it's not an issue at all, in my opinion. But if it's like you had him for freshman, you had him or her for freshman a year, and then you never talked again, and then like beginning of senior year and junior year, you pop in, you're like, hey, want to write me a letter of rec? It's definitely going to be an issue, or at least it won't be a good letter of recommendation. And I think, are there any other questions that we didn't answer? I'm just scrolling through.
Yeah, to add on to that about the freshman teacher, I think the biggest reason why people warn away from using freshman teachers as your letter of recommendation is because you grow and mature a lot as a person throughout high school. I mean, you change a lot from freshman to sophomore year to junior year, and junior year to senior year. And I think mostly that growth is positive. And if you really want the colleges to see the best version of yourself, you would probably want someone who knows you, who at the point that you've grown the most, right? But if you think that the freshman teacher knows you better, or knows you as a better person, as a better friend than your junior or sophomore teacher, don't go ask a junior teacher just because people tell you that to stay away from freshman teachers. Get the person who really knows you as the best of yourself that you are.
I see someone that asked, like, what should you do in middle school? Take a step back, breathe. In middle school, you really don't need to worry about this. This isn't something, like, even as a freshman or as a sophomore, like, you don't really need to worry about it. Junior, once you're an upperclassman, junior and senior year, it really ramps up. But to everyone who's, like, worrying about the college admissions process, like, again, I have to reiterate that this is a gamble. No one knows why, like us seven, none of us know why we got into the schools that we got in. Only the people at the admissions office do. And like, I've been to a lot of these growing up, but I think this is something that I have to say. Like, the college admissions process, like, people think of it as sort of a game. Like, you either win or you lose, and you win by getting into like an Ivy or the best school or your dream school. But that's really not the case. The true, like, so-called winners are those that really come away from the process with a better understanding of yourself. Like, the whole college admissions process in America talks about who you are as a person. That's the whole point of these essays. And that's why we said, like, essays are so important. So I think if you can come away with an understanding of yourself, the things that you truly hold to be important and the values, that makes you like the true so-called winner of this game. So in the end, just if you can take away anything, it's just that this is a wild process. None of us really know how to approach it. You sort of figure it out as you go along. And then the end result is not going to determine your future. College is not the ends to a means. I'm off my soapbox now.
Yeah, I agree with what Lisa said. Someone also asked, how much do math competitions help? So I was never a math person, and I never really participated in a lot of math competitions. But I talked to someone who did. His name was Wang, and he was like, he's a good friend of mine, and he was like, like he did some, and he also did like science competitions. And what he said was like, they help if you're like, again, really good. Basically, I think the theme is if you're really, really good at something, it's gonna help no matter what. Like even if it's like something weird, like but as long as there's like some kind of competitive form and it's recognized, right? So like obviously if it's something like I can balance like a bunch of like chairs on my head, that's not gonna help. But if you're good at anything and it's like a national competition, or at least it's like something that is competitive, and it should help. And for like math competitions, I know there's like math Olympiad and stuff like that. And if you do really well there, like I heard that helps a lot. And then there's also things like math counts and stuff. So I'm not really sure like what the levels are, like regional, national, and stuff like that. But I'm sure you know that more than I do. So if you can reach like the higher, like levels of that competition, that could be something good to put on your college application.
So I guess I can answer that question better because I've done math throughout all of middle school and high school. And I met Andrew Wong on the Math Counts Nationals team in my 8th grade year. That was pretty cool. I guess I basically covered it. I mean, if you're really good, like, I don't know, for the MAA competitions, like the AMC, AME, USAMO stuff, if you can make it to the like JMO or AMO like level, that's going to be a very big help to your college applications for sure. But that being said, I mean, the competitions are, I mean, if you enjoy doing math, the competitions are pretty fun. I mean, you get to compare stuff with your friends. You get to work through it with, I don't know, people from all different, I don't know, areas of the world. I guess there's a whole community that's been built around like these competitions, and it's fun to be a part of that. But I don't know, if we're talking like strictly how much it helps on your college application, right? I guess being in the math club itself and like holding leading roles in the math club is probably going to be a better boon to your college app than just taking the competitions, getting the 120, 130 on the AMC 10, AMC 12, qualifying for AME. I don't know. You really want, I think what's more important than just making the cutoff score for AME and stuff like that is kind of using that like to build, I don't know, like authority or reputation in the math club, and then use that to like get elected to hold office or something like that, and then make like social changes, or that's not social, like make changes in your math club, use like your leadership position to do something, and then write about that rather than in your essays, and show that off in your essays rather than just like flexing that you got you qualified for AME. Great. That shows you're good at math, but that doesn't really show much beyond that. You can be the most antisocial, the most I don't know, a really bad person, and still get like a really good score on your AME or your AMC. I think what's more important is to show off your personality, and then you can use that to do something with the math team that way, rather than just showing off your scores.
Yeah, on the thread of in general, just like, well, what activities are good for college? It just comes down to, are you good at it? Do you enjoy doing it? And is it beneficial to others in some other way? So there's no like one secret key activity that's going to guarantee you get into a good college. Like, just do what you
Your
like.
parents bribing the officers can do that.
Yeah, that is one thing. Yes, Andy's right about that. But like in terms of what you yourself do in school and activities and stuff, just do what you like make sure it's productive in some way and helps people out. If at the time in the start it's just like competing, find some way you can expand that to actually like helping others. There's no key one thing you can do.
All right, so I think we're gonna wrap up soon after this last question. If anybody wants to answer that one. Is being school president important?
I wasn't the school president, and I still got into the school I wanted to go to, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. There are also people that are presidents of student council that don't get into Ivy League's top 10 schools. I mean, if you do something really cool while being the school president, like include that. It probably will help you, but I don't think it hurts you to not be school president. Because in like the hundreds of people at each school, only one person can be like the school president, and I'm sure like not only that one person is going to get into a good school. Yeah.
I agree with that. I think like being school president is not important at all. I think a lot of people in the college admissions process place a lot of emphasis on holding a leadership role and like looking like you did something. But in the end, like it's not about like what role you hold, it's what role you held, but it's more like what you did with that role. So like if you're school president, that's like fine, but it doesn't really say anything unless you like enacted major change at your school, because you don't like when you're filling out the Common App, you don't just list the positions that you had. You also have to like give a description of like what you did like in that role and like the jobs that you held. And so like if you don't really do anything with the role that you have, then it doesn't really give you any benefit, because colleges can see like if you just ran for a position because you wanted to put it on your college app rather than like if you wanted to actually do something with it.
Yeah, and then one other quick thing, I think a lot of times if it's like student body or like student councils, sometimes it can become like a popularity contest, because it's voted by the student body. So like, you know, sometimes colleges also recognize that. They're like, okay, like this doesn't mean as much as, you know, if you were doing a dedicated leadership position for something that was more merit-based.
To be honest, oh, sorry. You can.
I was about to wrap
Okay.
it up, so you can answer.
Wait, too bad. Okay. I was just gonna say, like, even like Zidao was saying, it's basically a popularity contest. And like honestly, being like co-president of NHS, it literally means like nothing. Like at the time, I remember I like really cared about it, just because I thought it was like a leadership role that like would be helpful. But I literally, it was just one word on my application. Like I didn't talk about it in any of my essays. It was like barely mentioned. So it just really doesn't matter. And like compared to a lot of other activities and finding leadership in those, it's just insignificant basically. The only thing is like, I guess it helps with like finding influence in your school, just because like NHS or like student council is a big club, so more people might know who you are if that's important. Maybe in like other clubs that you want to become a leader in, if like you also have to be voted for that. But in general, it's like really just like negligent. Like it doesn't matter at all.
One final thing to add on in general about like all leadership positions, right? You hold the lead. What colleges really want to see when they say like hold leadership positions, I agree. It's that you enacted some kind of change. You did something with that position. So don't just go out and run for president of the most obscure clubs just to say I was president of 10, 15 clubs in high school, right? That's just going to be a word on your application. I think the main point of holding the leader positions is the experiences that come with it, and then how you can show that those experiences affected you or affected you and the people around you, how you changed the people around you by being a leader. And I think you can show that through your essays the most easily. And I think that's really the biggest advantage of holding a leadership position, is that you have more experiences to write about compared to someone who did not.
All right. Okay. I think all the questions have been answered, so I'll wrap it. Oh. Okay. So yeah, I'll just wrap it up here. I want to say thank you to everybody who listened in to this YLA college interview, and also a big thank you to the 7 seniors who participated, and also congrats for getting into the colleges. So yeah.
Thanks for organizing this. Did a great job.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Thanks, Geoffrey. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.